pushing, or I don't even know if you want to call it pushing, but at least bringing to the attention that there are such things as trade schools and apprenticeships and taking a couple years off and going to a community college or just donating your time for a year to get your head wrapped around things. I mean, there's so many options. So I think you're right. If and when the school forgiveness loan stuff comes in, I do agree that we should back it up with backing off, so to speak, the expectation of college and just showing so many more avenues that they can get into. I spent $10,000 18 years ago on to be a massage therapist. That's all I've ever spent on money, minus $2,000 for a hypnotherapy program I took a couple years ago. That's it. And I make, a decent living. Certainly not rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I make a decent living, and that was $10,000 I invested 18 years ago. So that does exist, and we should show a little bit more, shine a little bit brighter light on that that's a possibility for kids, as opposed to only losers go to trade schools. Talk to an electrician who's making $100,000 a year running their own business and see how loserish that is.
Right. Yeah, I really think that things like internships, those really need to come back on the scene in more companies. And, I mean, we have a real problem with, jobs that say you have to have experience, but they're not being at least a easy way to get experience. I mean, yeah, there's just a lot of runaround and a mess, especially for our young people that are trying to get into certain trades that you can't even go to college for and really get a degree for in these days. But yet there's not the entry-level positions the same way that there were previously.
True. And then entry-level positions sometimes require a bachelor's degree and want to pay you $10 an hour. So it's just like we really need to change that construct. I mean, if you're entry-level, food industry, sure, $15 an hour, but anything that takes any training and money and time and effort needs to come up from that number just significantly. Well, because we spend money to learn the trades that we have. And, for example, teachers. Now, I know that it's not cheap to go to school to be a teacher. Sometimes you got to go for 6 years. Sometimes it's more. It just depends, I guess, on how often you can go and if you're going full time. But that is going to rack up some money, and you're going to be walking into a position that wants to pay you $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 a year before taxes. So let's just pretend that someone makes $40,000 a year, and let's just take 20% off the top just for fun. That's $8,000. We're looking at $32,000 after taxes, $1,000 easy a month for rent, $1,000 for probably bills, and $1,000 for food. That's it. That's all that person has. That's the most basic living wage, in my opinion, that you can make and still have a car and an apartment and stuff. We're giving our teachers that have bachelor's degree just enough money to drive around the city and get to work. I'm like, this is bullshit. This is bullshit.
Yeah, and an extremely high stressful job where they have, one of the highest responsibilities to our society.
Incredible,
really
isn't it? Same as social workers. On the Alchemy Sisters, one of my shows over at Heartoverego Radio, several shows that we have a week there, the Alchemy Sisters, we often give shouts out to nurses, social workers, and teachers. We're like, you guys are the warriors on the front line, and you get very little respect for it, even though they're creating our health and future. It's really something.
Yeah, well, and what it creates is, a lot of people that don't care about their jobs when they have incredibly important jobs for society.
And I saw it when I was in school. I remember being a kid and thinking a lot of my teachers shouldn't be there because they didn't seem happy. And guess what? A lot of them shouldn't have been there. But they spent whatever money on schooling, and they didn't have the money to steer their way out of that, and they had bills to pay, and now you have teachers being teachers that shouldn't be teachers.
Right. And in these professions where everything becomes about numbers, and especially in anything that's government funded, it all becomes about numbers. And so it really squashes out any sentimental value that a person had in the beginning of why they wanted that job in the first place. Because in order to keep the job, they have to just put numbers instead of people.
And I know about 10 people who went to school to be a teacher. None of them teach because of that exact thing. The intention of getting into it didn't match up with what they would be doing all day. And they're brilliant people, and they just found something else to do. They moved their degree around or just got a different job or something like that. So they don't work as teachers. Now, I know about 10 people who don't have teaching degrees that should and could be teachers. So it's tricky, you know, the ones who maybe could handle it and should do it just didn't go to school for it, didn't have that 60,000 or whatever, you know, and then the ones who end up doing it often find themselves into something else. So it's very interesting. And this goes back to, let's teach our kids that it's okay to study something and then get out of it, and make it affordable for them to find something else to get into, and start watching them when they're young. We talk about this on the Alchemy Sisters too with Mandy. You know, Mandy, we talk about, giving the kids the opportunity to get their hands on stuff. Some of them are going to be better on computers. Some of them are going to be building magnificent things at 5 years old with their hands and a hammer and nails. So what we need to do is just let them play around with it. And what interests them at first grade might not interest them at sixth grade, but it's getting our eyes used to watching kids display their natural skills, and then veer them into a genre that they just have natural skills in. Again, letting them change their mind if they get sick of it or want to change careers, and not sitting on this heavy, go to school when you're 18 and then be in debt for the rest of your life and then have to work in that genre for the rest of your life. No, that's not healthy.
Yeah, no, I have a serious problem with the way that our schools are set up in general altogether. I mean, I really think that kids should be playing, not sitting in school and listening and raising their hand and not talking. I mean, it goes against everything that children are naturally. And we have a serious problem whenever we're putting our kids in environments that are the exact opposite to who they naturally are.
Agreed. And this is where we like to name our show Downward Dogma, because we're here to break down dogma and constructs around everyday life, not only politics, but the education system. We need to get inside of that and start maneuvering. And I think some of our best tools are the infiltrators, like Bernie. He could have easily gotten out of politics in the 70s and 80s and said, screw this, it's too heavy. No, he stayed and infiltrated and held space in a wildly egoic space. So I think if we get into the system and find those teachers that still have the shine in their eyes, that are still there for the good reasons, I feel like we can get to them and start moving from the inside out and, so to speak, have an infiltrator to help us move the energy. Or, I like to think of things that will help and what we can do. Or maybe we just keep petitioning for our kids and keep going up against the powers that be, i.e. the government that run our public school systems, and keep demanding change. Because if you look back in the past, if we bitch sometimes we get what we want. But it's going to be a hard move, but I do think we can do it.
Yeah, we can just take what we want as well.
And that too. There's that option as well.
I don't know that the government system's going to give us what we want.
We might have to take, which is so funny that we're talking about this dynamic, because yesterday on the Alchemy Sisters we had a wonderful guest, and she was in a documentary. She's a healer now, but she was in this documentary. If anyone gets a chance, watch it. It's called American Commune, and it's about the farm, which is still running, commune in Summertown, Tennessee. She was she was raised Jewish. And she was talking about how she had an epiphany in synagogue one day, and she said, "Why does everyone have to get all fancied up to come talk to God? And why is this?" And so she was checking out the bouginess and not wanting to affiliate with it. Well, she was one of the caravans that left San Francisco with Stephen Gaskin, which is their spiritual leader. They got into some old hippie buses and they tooled around down into the Southwest and landed in Tennessee and created the biggest and most functioning commune there is to this day, and it's been one of the longest runnings. But the reason I'm saying this is because I was saying that, she had brought up that idea of how she was sitting in synagogue, and she's like, "I don't like this bougie shit." Well, guess who else said that? Another group in the 60s that made revolutionary waves, but they were wildly militant, and they were called the weather underground or the weathermen underground. And I was like, oh my God, the weathermen hated the bouginess too. And she goes, wait a minute, they were blowing up government buildings. We went and created a sustainable living. And I was like, whatever works. We need it all. Blow up some government buildings, start some communes. Let's incorporate. Let's just use everyone's skills. But anyway, if anyone gets a chance, watch American Commune. You'll see our guest from yesterday, Jan Mundo, on there. Her actual daughters made the documentary, and they used to work for MTV back in the day. So check that one out. You'll like her story, and she's a headache specialist. So she was talking about her healing work. And also watch The Weather Underground. It's a documentary documenting the handfuls of people that went underground and were blowing up government buildings in response to the Vietnam War. They were on the run till the 80s. There is a spectacular movie that was based on a lot of the facts and understandings. River Phoenix was in it. It was made, must have been late 80s, called Running on Empty. It's about a family that's on the run, and they were a weatherman, and they have to change their hair color and move across the city. So it showed the life of a revolutionary on the run. Watch it. It'll blow your mind.
Yeah, that's nice. I'll have to check that out.
I think you'll like it.
Yeah, you brought up a great point about using everybody's skills. And I think that that's really, if we're going to build a new construct, I think that's exactly what it needs to be, is something that is about inclusion. Because everybody has a gift. And it's not about judging whether, we like one or not. They all can work for us. Like we were talking about before the show, the internet being a tool. All things have, double use. We get to choose how we use it. And so we can take the things and traits and characteristics that seem negative in our current situation, but twist them and use them to where they are supporting the whole.
Yes.
And
agreed.
Go ahead.
No, I'm so sorry. I wanted to hear what you have to say, but what you're reminding me of, and who I think maybe took this militant energy and may have used it a little bit more wisely than maybe the Weathermen Underground, which is Malcolm X. He was very militant, but I don't think that they were blowing up government buildings. I think they were just rounding up the troops at that point. But either or, it's very interesting. I wanted to hear what you had to say, though. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point because, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, they were fighting for the same cause, but from two different angles.
Yes.
And that's exactly the point, is that, we can say, well, Martin Luther King was much more, calm and acceptable to the masses, the way that he went about it, whereas, Malcolm X was much more triggering. But they were both needed in order to bring about the solution. And I think that's true. I'm not really for being a part myself in groups like Antifa and things like that, but that's not to say that they don't have a purpose, because they do. And they wouldn't exist if they didn't have a purpose. Trump wouldn't exist if he didn't have a purpose. We all are placed here for a particular reason. And we have the choice to sit back and eat popcorn and watch the show. Or, we can be all in our feelings and dramatic about it. And then, which side are we playing?
Exactly. And I think it's brilliant. And I'm always wildly happy to hear your points of view, and you just really open up my mind. And I just want to tell all the listeners, we are Downward Dogma. I am Jennie, and you have the beautiful Tasha here with us today, and we're going to play a quick commercial, and we will be back in 54 seconds.
You're listening to Third Eye Political Radio, and we really appreciate you joining us. And when you have a moment, why don't you check out our sister station, Heartoverego Radio, where we offer a lineup of shows that are guaranteed to raise your vibrations and guide you into your best life. We offer shows on Sundays, Everyday Psychic Radio, Mondays, The Alchemy Sisters, Tuesdays, Radical Spirituality, and on Wednesdays, All for One is Love. And then we close out the week on Fridays with Rain Radio. Amazing shows produced for you 5 days a week, only on Blog Talk Radio. That's right, it's our sister station, Heartoverego Radio.
Welcome.